Hello, BookTube. I'm back with a bit of mail, as well as sort of where I'm at, sort of a little bit of bookish reading type thing. Let's just start out with a thing or two that I received in the post. I finally got this is volume one of the Virago Book of Ghost Stories. It's a book that I didn't actually know existed, and I'll explain why in a moment. But there's a lot to recommend this one. There's it looks like a lot of good stories in here. Few I've read, but most, or I would say a lot that I haven't. But it was published by Virago Press, obviously, in 1987. Edited by Richard Dalby, who has done the other volumes and many other collections of ghost stories. But it's got an introduction by Jenny Uglow, um, and it's looks quite interesting. It's not a short introduction. Well, it's not long. It's about let's see how many pages here. Let's just take a look. So you got 7 pages long, which isn't too bad. But I like her because I first came across her. I think it was through a remainder, sort of a little history of British gardening, and I thought, oh, that'd be kind of interesting, and I really like that. And the next thing that I bought of hers was something called the Lunar Man. I haven't read that yet, but it's of a sort of a little club of during the 1760s in and around Birmingham or the Midlands, and just sort of scientists. I think Wedgwood was part of it. Erasmus Darwin, grandfather of Charles, and let's see, Watt, the steam engine, James Watt, yeah, James Watt, and many others. And I thought that would be really interesting. I just haven't got around to reading it because I've been given another one. It's the next library of another. There seems to be a thing like there are many of these sort of clubs, and they'd be an interesting little collection to have these. There's not only sort of scientific clubs, but there obviously were the literary clubs, and those were, I think, more popular. But it probably you could probably have about a half a dozen or maybe a dozen books on the sort of scientific clubs, which would be kind of interesting. But anyway, and she's written a lot of other stuff. Like she's written like a massive biography on is it Gaskell, Elizabeth Gaskell, um, and I want to get her Hogarth biography and a bunch of other things. But she's also, after looking through this or online after getting this today, she's done a couple other collections herself, edited under Jenny Uglow. I'm not sure why. Maybe I don't think it's anyone different. Jennifer Uglow, Jenny Uglow. It's got to be the same historian, but she's done a couple collection of ghost stories that look really, really interesting. One of them is a sort of collection of sort of newspaper articles taken from even from film, I think. But it's a whole bunch of stuff. It looks quite interesting. But getting back to the reason why I didn't realize this was volume, there was a volume of that, because I've had and enjoyed the Victorian ghost stories. This is I do need to upgrade this at some point. But also Richard Dalby, Victorian ghost stories, and then you get this Virago Book of Ghost Stories Volume 2. This isn't too bad. Pages are wider than the one I received today, but yeah, so I just assumed, they put out this one and they didn't maybe expect to put out another volume. I didn't even look at dates, so I don't even know if those correspond to my thoughts. But thinking this was volume one, and then later they decided to put out another volume, so they called it volume two. And I left it there. And until just recently, with the book that I am currently reading, I realized, wait a minute, there's another volume, which is this one here. Now you see, my thoughts on this are the logical train of thoughts. It works because this one does not say volume one. So when they did put this one out, they weren't, I guess, expecting another volume. So yeah. So, but anyway, I'm really glad to have it. So there'll be some new stuff to read through there, and these, along with the Oxford 3 volumes, are just amazing. There's a junior sort of young adult. Uh, there's 2 volumes I think they've done. I've got one of the volumes for Oxford sort of junior ghost stories, which I haven't read, so I don't know what those are like. Uh, but uh, but yeah, those are the tops for me, and possibly I'm gonna order definitely at some point the Jenny Uglow 2 volumes. One is came out in hardcover, and the other just was in paperback. It's out of print, but I think I can get a good copy of it. Other things that come in the post, I did mention last week I didn't get the TLS, the Times Literary Supplement. It came today, and it is October 2nd, so I'm confused. This is Tuesday already after the fact. So I can, like, a lot of times I get, well, the latest I usually get it is Thursday, and it's for Friday's edition. Sometimes I get it on Wednesday, so I get it a bit earlier, quite a bit earlier. So I don't know. But there's some interesting stuff in here. I've only read the MC column now at the back and flipped through, but there's definitely a little more than I think that the previous week, the week before this. I don't, if I remember right, there really wasn't much of interest to me, but there are a few things in that. I also got some postcards from a friend who's living in Taiwan at the moment. That's a really nice one there, and some nice they're fruity stamps. And here's another one. See it that way. And there's the other one, larger ones. But again, some fruity stamps. And I do collect postcards. That's one of the other things I do collect. And not sort of rapidly. I do. I have in the past bought sort of lots off of eBay, which are fun. I like the ones that have been actually posted because you get to read people's messages on there. And there's some that are just you know that it's in code for something. um, and those are always quite fun, especially with the stamps. And I'm generally try to stick to ones that are sort of historically orientated, and I like ones of churches and cathedrals. Library. Like, yeah, there's some that have library. Like, yeah, it's historical type buildings, which are really nice. Um, what else did I get? Oh yeah, yeah. Wow, let's just back up a bit. I mentioned that I was going to start reading this, Diamonds, Gold, and War, the making of South Africa. I was going to start this. I started it, but I didn't realize, because I got this as an add-on to another one, same author. I'm still waiting for it. He did a massive, like, 800. It's sort of massive. It's 800-page history of Africa itself. So I bought that, and then this popped up. And I go, oh yeah, I'll have that. And it was so cheap, I never looked into it any more than I did until I started reading it. I was thinking it was a general history of Africa. Turns out it's history of Africa from 1870 to 1910, just when it sort of became independent. Um, so, which is fabulous. I like that, but I put it aside for my reading. And decided to read something else, which I didn't really get to until yesterday. Starting is History of South Africa by Frank Welsh, and I'm only in, like, I'm not even about 50 pages in, so I'm just starting that, to be honest. But that's really good. That's about 500 pages for South Africa. But the reason why I mentioned that other this one here was because then I thought, well, okay, I wonder if he's done another volume prior to this, to lead up to 1870, and it'd be nice to have nice several histories of it. But I couldn't find it. But I did find something else, and this is like a doorstopper as well. It's Africa, A Modern History, 1945 to 2015, by Guy Arnold. It's over 1,000 pages long. The cover price for it is £40, and Amazon had it really, really cheap. £10. Well, it's gone back up, I think $15.99 or something like that. But I just figured, well, I'm not going to read this for some time, but I can't pass this up. I know I've said many times that I'm not that interested in modern history. Well, yes and no. And I thought this would be just a good, and that's all it's going to be, is a survey of Africa. And it says 1945, but it starts out in 1960. So I guess I can't fault it for that. But so it's really 1960s, 70s. It goes by decade basically. 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and then I think there's an add-on and afterward 2000 to 2015, very small. So it's really only 40-year history really. But like it's just it started independence mostly for most countries in 1945 and after. So yeah, so I'm really, really glad to get that. It's, as I say, it's a doorstopper. It's very heavy, and yeah, so I'm pleased with that. Now, what I'm reading, I mentioned I started because Sunday for some reason I got sidetracked and I hardly read much on Sunday at all, and so I started yesterday again, but I started late. In sort of early evening, so I didn't get a whole lot done. And I'm plugging along with this, but I'm not too far into it. I'm like just 56 pages into it. This is the one that mentioned the other Virago volume, and it's quite interesting. Tales of the Troubled Dead, talking about, especially the first chapter was to do, or the prologue was to do with how a ghost story that was written down as, or purportedly to be written down as a true story in the mid 17th century, and then later published in the early 18th century as a true story. However, later it was embellished and fictionalized, and how the fictional story has sort of become memory in a sense, or folkloric memory in the area in England here. And then she goes into the ghosts that are in Shakespeare, how he borrowed for things, and how sort of ghost stories. What I get is that she's going to go through and sort of say how ghost stories arrived at sort of the Victorian era type ghost stories and modern ghost stories, how they sort of morphed into that from all these earlier depictions of them, which is quite interesting. And I'm also reading. I'm just reading one story a day. M.R. James. This is Count Magnus and other ghost stories. It says that this is a annotated version. Well, I wouldn't say it's annotated. There's interesting footnotes, which are quite interesting at times. They're very good at times. The author or the editor will mention where a manuscript that he writes of in a story, and he says, yeah, that this is either fictional or it's referenced by someone, but it doesn't, they don't have an extant copy, or only fragments of this exist, and things like that. So that I find that very, very interesting. But I'm really enjoying this. Is the third read through, I think, of M.R. James's stories for me. I really only started about 6 years ago, approximately. I had tried him in the past a couple times, but for some reason I just didn't get along with it. And then there was on Twitter, there was somebody I was following that was doing at that time was starting to do a PhD, the first sort of full study of ghost stories. She's now done her PhD, and I'll leave a link to the bottom if anybody's interested, because she's editing a collection of M.R. James's letters. There's only been one, I think, small collection, which I do have. I've shown in my shelf tour, but I will definitely leave a link, because she's doing it's on Unbounders, and you can it's like a subscription. If you're not familiar with it, you can look around. But if you are interested in that, that'd be it'd be great to see. I can't wait till it comes out. It's just getting close to fully funding for it, and then I believe there'll be more. It'd be nice if there's more books to come from her. But I'll leave the link at the bottom, and I'm gonna hold this up. Let's hold it up like this, because every time I seem to see thumbnails, it's either with my mouth open or with my hands looking like I'm going to strangle someone, or either looking like I'm picking my nose, or rubbing my eyes, or my hand behind my head. So I'm going to hold this here, as I say, and just speak for a little bit, and hope this will actually show up as a thumbnail. So come on, YouTube, do your job, because I'm holding it there for a long time. Okay, that should be enough. Anyway, that's it for my Tuesday sort of bookish ramble reading. I'm so pleased to get something like this. It will be some time before I read this, and it may not be something that I'll read cover to cover either. It's done in sections and periods, so and you can read a section, because he's got like a retrospective of the whole area, of the whole decade and so forth. So, but anyway, I will say goodbye, BookTube, and I'm not sure when I'll be back. I'll definitely be back for Friday, Friday reads, to see where I've got along with what I've started to read here, and possibly by then I'll have a few other things that have come in the post. Take care, BookTube. Bye.